If you're teaching yourself how to make jewelry and you feel like you have the basics down of soldering, filing, polishing, all those things, and you're ready to move on to stone setting, these are all the tools that I recommend that you get to start to learn, both at a basic level if you have a tight budget, and I have a few tools that I'd recommend if you are ready to kind of invest in some more long-term tools. I'll try and include a little bit of both when possible. One of the hardest things about teaching yourself kind of the next level is just knowing what to buy and knowing what's a waste or what's not a waste. And so these are all the things I purchased whenever I was starting stone setting, and so hopefully this can help you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Adriana and I've been running my handmade jewelry business called Matera Made for the last 3.5 to 4 years. I started with clay jewelry. I don't even really count that year. So if we're not counting clay, then 3 years. And I mostly wax carve now and cast here in my studio. And so that's what my videos here are about, are usually studio vlogs, a little bit of tool reviews, and just basic tips. So let's get into the video. So I think one of the easiest stone setting techniques that is good to start with is with cabochon stones, bezel wire, and just some sheet, and just making basic bezel cups and setting those stones. That's what I started with. So for that, the tools that you're going to need to close that bezel are various numbers of rockers and pushers and burnishing tools. And that's really nice because those are really cheap, so it's a good entry-level way to get into stone setting. So these are the 3 that I started off with. So this is just a basic rocker, and with this you literally rock it over along the bezel wire and it pushes the bezel wire over the stone. Every now and then, if I had like a hard corner of bezel wire, I would use this pusher, but I also use this pusher for claw settings. And then the last thing you're going to need is a burnishing tool. This is the one that I have, but I think they have a bunch of different shapes. But this just allows the metal to get hard. So when your bezel's all nice and closed up, you're going to take the tool and run it along the edge of the bezel wire, and it just work hardens it and also makes it really shiny. So these are the 3 tools that you'll need if you're working with super thin bezel wire and you can push it over manually. And these are really affordable. You can get them on Amazon. You can also get them at Rio Grande, Pepe Tools, Cooks on Gold if you're in England or in the UK. The next easiest stone setting technique is going to be a flush setting on a round stone. I don't have a good example of a flush setting on me, I don't think. Oh, this is one I had done a long time ago. So this is a flush setting. This is one of the first ones I'd ever done, so it's not the cleanest job at all, but it's one of the easier stone setting techniques to get down. Pretty much you just drill out a hole straight through the piece, and then you take a ball burr that's the exact same size as your stone, and then you place your stone inside, and then you're going to use a very tiny pusher that you're going to modify. You might be able to find one online. I never was able to, so I had to modify my own. But then you just rub it on the edges of the metal around the stone in a circle, and it pushes the metal over the stone. So to do this flush setting, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need various ball burrs, just depending on what size stones you plan on working in. If you're practicing, I really recommend that you get 2mm or 3mm cubic zirconia. That makes them small enough, but not too small to see, to practice with, and they're very cheap. And then to practice on some brass rings or even some silver rings if you have some leftover scrap. So you're going to need those practice gemstones. You're also going to need something that can get you really close to see those tiny stones, because when you're doing a flush setting, it's really important that the girdle of the stone is under the silver. If it's not low enough, then when you go to set the stone, your stone's going to pop right out. And again, if it's too low, then it's going to be hard to push that metal over. So you take a little bit of metal away at a time, and all of that really depends on how well you can see. So you're going to need to get some sort of magnifying glasses so that you can get up and close with your jewelry. Otherwise, your eyes are going to feel so strained after spending hours of practicing. These are pretty affordable. I think I got them on Amazon for maybe $20. They're not expensive at all. This is something else that I really recommend when you're working with stones that are in that 2 to 3mm size, because they are so tiny. This is a 10x magnifying glass, and this will allow you to get even closer than what your eyepieces can get, and I use this all the time, so I really do think it's necessary. And again, you can get this on Amazon. I think I paid $5 for it, but you just put it up to your piece and it just obviously magnifies it super big. So those are very necessary for this process, but also as you grow in stone setting, you're going to use those time and time again. So next you're going to need a grinding wheel. I got mine from Rio Grande and they are kind of expensive. I think I paid $40 for this, but this is going to last so long because I don't do a ton of grinding here in my shop, but this comes in handy so much. So I put this on my flex shaft, and then I made my pusher out of an old broken ball burr. So if you want to buy a cheap little ball burr, you can just break the tip off and create your own pusher, because when you're working with such small stones, they don't really make pushers that can go around the opening of the stone that wouldn't hit the stone and break it. And this is really common. One of the biggest things about jewelry making is being able to modify your own tools and be creative with your own tools. So I took that broken ball burr and I got this little handle piece that has a chuck on it. This chuck doesn't get super big, so it can't hold all of my tools, but it can hold these smaller little pushers and burnishing tools. You can see it's really nice and round, but it wasn't. When I broke it off, I had to take my grinding wheel and roll it and roll it and roll it to get it really nice and round on top. You don't want it to have any sharp edges. You want to be able to roll your finger on it, and that way it doesn't scratch or break your stone. Once you modify your tool small enough to push metal around that tiny of a stone, you want to make sure that you sand and polish it. And again, that way it doesn't scratch or break your stone, but also that way it doesn't scratch the metal. When your tools are nice and shiny, that's how your metal comes out nice and shiny. So those are the only things that you'll need for a flush setting. Ball burrs, you can use round or stone setting burrs. It's kind of personal preference. I typically don't use stone setting burrs as much as maybe I should, but it really is personal preference with stone setting. Some jewelers will use ball burrs for everything. Others will use stone setting burrs. So it's really up to you and what works for you. Get yourself a set of stone setting burrs and ball burrs. There's so many different sizes. That's why getting a set for when you're first learning is really nice. If you know though what size stones you're going to be practicing with the most, then just get the ball burrs that fit that size and then a few down. If you're trying to burr out a hole for a 3 or 4 millimeter stone, you want to have those smaller burrs so that you don't wear out your bigger ones, so that you can burr out a 1 millimeter hole, then burr out a 2 millimeter hole, then burr out a 3 millimeter hole, then burr out a 4 millimeter hole, you know? That way you don't have your 4 millimeter one trying so hard for so long to burr out that metal. So the next most affordable stone setting technique is going to be grain setting. This one is a little bit challenging. You're going to need a lot of the same tools that you use for flush setting. So you're going to need your ball burr set, your stone setting burr set, drill bits, practice stones, of course, your magnifying glasses, your magnifying little eyepiece, and then you're also going to need a set of gravers. And this is where it gets kind of challenging on which graver and which size graver, because they have all different shapes and sizes. If you can only purchase a few gravers, I really recommend getting an onglet graver, or if you're in the UK, they call it a spit stick, and a half round graver. A square graver is also really nice if you're wanting to do something like a star setting. You're going to need a square graver, but if you're just practicing grain setting, you're not really going to need a square graver, so you can leave that one out until later. Both the onglet graver and the half round graver are nicer for different reasons. So the onglet graver can raise up a thicker bead because it has a round bottom, so it can scoop up more metal, but the onglet graver has a very pointy bottom, so it makes it easier to gouge out the metal. So it's going to be completely up to you which one you find easiest to work with and which one you like the end result with. I think sometimes people forget with jewelry making that there's not always a right way to do something. It also depends on how you like the result. So do you want a larger bead? Obviously with larger stones, you're gonna need a larger bead to hold it in. But do you like the way those bigger beads look? Or do you like a smaller subtle bead? Do you find it easier to use the half round one because you get a larger bead and it's easier to push it down? So there are so many different factors that's gonna make one over the other easiest for you, or that you might like one over the other more. So I recommend getting an onglet or a half round graver. And if you can, get a few different sizes. Both of mine are pretty small. I don't remember the sizes that I got off the top of my head, but I'll try and put them right here if I can find it. Also, many of these gravers don't come with a handle. So if you feel comfortable putting them on a wooden handle, wooden handles are the most affordable way to set your gravers. And for that, I can make a video if you'd like, but pretty much you have to heat up the bottom of your graver with a torch and put it in a vise, heat it up, and then you have to hammer your wooden handle on that piping hot graver and it creates a bunch of smoke and it's kind of messy. And then you have to break off the top and reshape the face of your graver, which is not ideal. So if you want to skip that step and you're willing to pay a little bit more for convenience and to not have to reshape the face of your graver, which you will have to do one day, so you're gonna have to learn that a whole other day, which that grinding wheel comes in handy for, then you're gonna want to get the GRS gravers that are already kind of set to the right size. The right size for your graver is about the palm of your hand. They sell the ones that are already that normal size, and then you can either set that on a handle so you don't have to break it and reface it, or you can just buy their chuck style handpiece, which honestly I wish I would have done a long time ago. This is the GRS handle and it's really comfortable because it's rubber, it's not that block of wood, but also the chuck style opens really large, so I can use other gravers from other brands that are more affordable in this handle without having to set each one. So I really recommend, if you're able to spend the extra 30 bucks, I believe it's 30 or 35, just get this chuck style, and that way you can take out each graver as you want to change gravers. It's paying for convenience, but I do think it's worth it. So you're gonna need the handle, you're gonna need the 2 gravers, you're gonna already have your grinding wheel in case you need that, but now you need something to sharpen it, because one of the biggest parts of grain setting is having sharp gravers and knowing how to sharpen your gravers. So you're gonna need a diamond sharpener. So this is the one I got on Amazon. So this one's a fine grit. There's a blue one that is a more coarse grit, which you can get. Thankfully, I haven't found a need to get that one, but if I feel like I do in the future, I will. But anyway, this is the one I have and it works perfectly fine. And so that one's gonna be your first step of sharpening your graver, and then you're gonna wanna use an Arkansas stone. I also got this on Amazon. This is also going to make your graver kind of shiny whenever you rub it on there. Those are how I keep my gravers sharp, and that's a non-negotiable. You have to have that if you plan on working with gravers and keeping your tools sharp. Otherwise, it just won't work. So the other thing you're going to need if you're doing grain setting or bead setting is a beading tool. So you can also get this on Amazon. You can also get it on Cooks on Gold, Rio Grande. I think Pepe Tools might have one of these, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's just a little set. I haven't had any reason to go outside of this set. So far, this has had every single thing that I need. It just has different size little cups to fit different size grains that you raise. Claw settings are also a really affordable stone setting technique, and probably that should have been the first one. Maybe the second one, but you really only need like 3 things for that. So you're gonna obviously want your ball burrs or your stone setting burrs that's set so that you can take away a little bit of the metal to help the girdle of the stone get secure within the claws. So you're gonna need that. You're also gonna need a pusher, which ideally you would have had already from your first stone setting ventures. I use this to push my claws over every single time, and you can even modify this with your grinding wheel to have a little divot in the middle to better fit your claw to push it over. I know some people do that so that their pushers don't slip one way or the other, so you can do that. I haven't done it yet. Maybe I will one day, but this is all you need to push those claws over. Pushing those claws over will create little dents and divots in the metal in the claws of your setting, so you're going to need a file to file those away. This is the one that's going to be the safest to use around your stone. A lot of people, and sometimes I do whenever I'm working with softer stones, I'll tape up the stone and then cut around the claws so that I can file and sand and all those things. But you're gonna want a beret file. This is what a beret file looks like. It's got the teeth on the bottom but nothing on the sides, and that will keep you from scratching your stone when you're filing down the claws. I'll try and find a clip of me using this file, but I use this pretty vigorously around my stones, and I've never scratched any stones by using this. But if I would have used my normal file set, I absolutely would have, because when you're filing your prongs, you're doing this motion, and so the sides of your file are more likely to hit your stone, and if they have teeth there, then you're gonna scratch it. So I really do feel like a beret file is necessary. So the last one, and probably one of the more expensive ones, is when you're bezel setting a thick bezel. You can do this in an affordable way. A lot of people will use a hammer and a punch, and that works perfectly fine for them. That's how they've been doing it for thousands of years, so it's not 100% necessary to have these tools that hit for you, but I never felt comfortable from the very beginning using a hammer and a punch. So if you're like me and you don't feel comfortable doing that, and you possibly have the budget to buy some tools to help you set those thicker bezels, I really recommend that you get a Fordham hammer handpiece to help you push that metal over. This is for people that have a Fordham flex shaft. I have a Fordham SR pendant motor, and it attaches, and it has a reciprocating action piece on the inside that helps me push the metal over the stone. I use this on almost a daily basis in my studio for setting stones, and it's made life so much easier and so much more reliable. There are also other stone setting tools that can attach to this handpiece, like the Lion Punch Forge engraver adapter. I taught myself how to grain set just by hand pushing hand gravers, but I really do find it a lot easier to use this adapter. You'll find once you start practicing with hand gravers that sometimes you can slip if you're putting a little too much force and you don't have the right angle, but with using this, you really don't have to push at all. That reciprocating action from the hammer hand piece helps push this, and so you don't have to put as much force behind it, which creates a lot less accidents. And I believe this adapter is about $35 and it's well worth it. So if you've got the budget for the hammer hand piece and the Lion Punch Forge, I really do think that these two are worth it. But again, if you don't, no big deal. Use a hammer and a punch. I would assume that people are modifying these tips to create that punch, but if anyone in the comments is using a hammer and one of these little punches, please let me know how you guys use it. I would really be interested to hear what the benefits are, aside from the obvious of saving the money from buying those tools. The last item that you're gonna need for stone setting is pretty obvious, and that is some kind of vise to hold your piece. I started off with a wooden ring vise that I got on Amazon for maybe $5, $6. Really affordable way to hold your jewelry. If you're on a bit of a budget, then that is a perfect option. You can go a long way with just that. But if you have a little bit that you can spend, or you're wanting to do the buy once, cry once, then I have two vices that I personally love. But that is this Encore vise. I use this on a daily basis to set stones in my rings. You guys see me using it all the time in my videos. This one is pretty pricey though. You also have to have this GRS mounting plate in order to use it, which is a little bit of money. That plate is expensive. I think it's about $40, maybe a little bit less, but it does have all of these extra tools that they sell that can attach to it. So this is one of them. This was one of my big splurge item. I think this is about $600, but it gives you a ton of flexibility with your piece. You can turn it up, down, you can make this taller, bring it down lower. You can spin it 360 degrees, and it's just such a convenient tool to stone set on. The only downside of this though is that it's hard to stone set earrings on this. You maybe could fit some Thermolock in here, and Thermolock is kind of like a plastic that you can heat up, mold your piece around it, and then stick it in a vise and it will dry rock hard. So you maybe could do that. I've never tried it. Maybe I'll try it soon, but it's really hard to set necklaces or earrings in this. So really it's really a ring thing, but it's so convenient. So I use this on a daily basis. Another option that a lot of people prefer is a ball vise, and I love having this around. I use this a lot for necklaces and for earrings. This also has a ton of maneuverability. You can rotate it all the way around. It's got these pegs on here, so if you need to hold something, like you can put these little stakes to keep it from rocking side to side. But a lot of people prefer a ball vise over the Encore, so it's just personal preference. This is also, I believe, half of the price from Pepe Tools. So again, personal preference, also for two very different things, so it's completely up to you. You use your best judgment and with what you can afford. But that ends my list of everything that I feel like you would need for stone setting. If you feel like I missed anything, which is very possible, please leave it in the comments. And I really hope this video can help you get started on your stone setting journey. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.